Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
Will Louisiana ever reach its potential? We'll discuss Reset for Louisiana's Future when Robert Travis Scott of the Public Affairs Research Council and Michael Olivier of the Committee of 100 for Economic Development join us when we return on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
At Optimal, we understand what's at stake during your projects. That's why we value integrity, trust, and expertise. We retain proven and experienced craftsmen, and with multiple locations, we can execute hundreds of customized project solutions across the country, so you stay ahead of schedule and under budget. At Optimal, you come first, plain and simple. We have your back, and we always deliver. Experience the Optimal difference.
Are you a licensed contractor? There's lots of good contractors in Louisiana doing work the right way, but unfortunately, too many unlicensed contractors are working outside the licensing requirements. Working as a contractor in Louisiana requires a license for the company doing the work. The Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors wants to help you get licensed to allow you to conduct work legally. It's not difficult to get the license. We can help you. Go to lacontractor.org for more information. Licensed contractors, it's the law.
For 8 seconds in the arena before an afternoon in the field. For a promise to students that honors success in the classroom. For championships earned on the bayou. For innovators committed to reclaiming our coastline. The universities of Louisiana. For your future. For our future.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're going to discuss Reset for Louisiana's Future with Michael Olivier. He's the CEO of Committee of 100, and Robert Travis Scott, Public Affairs Research Council. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey,
Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us on, Tim.
We've got a lot to talk about. Reform efforts specifically in Louisiana. This Reset for Louisiana's Future, critically important. But let's start with a little bit of an overview of the organizations that you lead. Robert, tell us about PAR.
I'm president of the Public Affairs Research Council, we're known as PAR. We've been around for 70 years, and a lot of what we've done is just try to hold government accountable for what they're doing, but we've had a lot of great educational programs in the past years trying to help people understand what's going on in government, but we also do research and make policy recommendations.
A long history, very important history in Louisiana's past. It's been an organization that has provided a lot of great information, great data, great research for the legislature over the years. Michael, tell us about C100.
Well, the Committee of 100 started in 1992, and I think what's important to note is under the moniker Secure, there was an effort to get public dollars involved with private sector dollars to create what was ultimately addressed by the entire legislative package. The governor of Louisiana, in fact, it went into 2 governors of Louisiana, but over a 6-year period, they determined that we needed to change a lot of things in the state, and they did. And they hired one of the big 4 law firms to the tune of a couple $1 million, introduced a number of pieces of legislation with legislative help, with the endorsement of the legislature. In fact, the Secure movement became a committee unto the legislature, and they passed a number of laws, over 140 different pieces of legislation to improve Louisiana's business.
And so C100 is an organization of the top CEOs of the biggest companies, some of the largest and most critical organizations in Louisiana's economy.
We do have large companies like AT&T, Shell, ExxonMobil, but we also have all kinds of companies, and it really depends on the individual. The leadership of the chief executive, who makes a difference in terms of wanting to get engaged. And so you just don't join the Committee of 100. You have to be nominated. There's a process, a vetting process. We're pretty much similar to the National Business Roundtable. And we, in Louisiana, as a roundtable, operate with there are 32 other states that have business roundtables that we meet with and pretty much share best practices in terms of what the National Business Roundtable does.
And there are a lot of higher education leaders who are on the Committee of 100 as well.
It really is a critically important organization dealing with public policy and economic development in our state. We talk a lot about Louisiana's potential on this show, and we have for 7 years. I said in the open, the question is, will Louisiana ever finally reach its potential? I'd like each of you to give me your perspective on where Louisiana is today relative to that, what we all believe is fantastic potential. Robert, let's start with you.
Well, we keep believing that there's a greater potential out there, no question about it. We keep believing that you can have more young people getting through school with better educations, more industry qualified certificates, more college degrees. We believe in that future for Louisiana. We believe that it can be a better environment for business to operate in. And whether that's fixing our tax laws or helping out our workforce development, those are things that we really believe we can do. And I think some of this is a cultural change, not just a specific legislative bill here and there. It's a cultural change that has to come along with it.
We have to want more and we have to demand more. Michael, your perspective on where Louisiana sits in regards to its potential.
You know, I started out in Lafayette, Louisiana, working for what was the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce. The economic development arm of that was called the Lafayette Harbor Terminal and Industrial Development District. How would you like to answer that telephone? And so we changed the name to the Lafayette Economic Development Authority, which operates today, continues to operate.
Greg Gautreaux will be on this show later in the season, right?
And that model was also used on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, in Gulfport, Mississippi, where I worked for 15 years before coming back to Louisiana, to this organization called the Committee of 100 for Economic Development Incorporated. And one thing they wanted to do was to use their gravitas, in other words, the leadership from the private sector. They said, we are the Committee of 100 for Economic Development. We want to see some things happen. You're a professional economic developer. You've been Secretary of the State, and we want you to do something relative to making some things happen. So as the evolution occurred with Barry Irwin with the Council for Better Louisiana,
right,
and this guy who was a journalist, both guys were journalists, so they bring a different perspective to the organizations. But now PAR is the research arm. In other words, they're the think tank that they fashion everything, study it, and they throw it over the wall. We or someone will catch it. Cable will catch it, Committee of 100 will catch it, and we'll do things with it. We will advocate for those issues. So we've been operating for a long time as partners. In this instance, this year, beginning last year, we decided we'd make it more formal. And we created this coalition of the Council for Better Louisiana, the Public Affairs Research Council, and the Committee of 100. And we put our money, our leadership put $500,000 into the project. And we're continuing into 2020. And our purpose was to focus on those legislators who are running for office. We met with over 200 candidates running for the legislature. And we didn't forget the gubernatorial candidates. But our focus was on the fact that this is the largest turnover we've ever had of our legislature, ever, since term limits has been approved. And so we wanted to influence those people. We wanted to gift them some of the best public policy issues with the best opportunity now to make those changes. And you know, those changes are embodied in terms of what we're doing with Reset 2020.
Well, I want to take a break, and I want to come back, and I want to get into the specifics of those policy recommendations, because as you mentioned, PAR, C100, Council for a Better Louisiana have all come together now with a real focus on the things that need to change in our state. We're visiting with Robert Travis Scott of the Public Affairs Research Council and Michael Olivier of the Committee of 100 for Economic Development. You're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Spadel's Florist was founded over 30 years ago. From my mom's kitchen, we have grown into one of the largest florists in this area. There's a sense in our community that you stick together. Good times or bad, and oil and gas is part of that family. They're my neighbors. They're my customers. They're the person I'm sitting next to at church. If oil and gas is doing well, all of our businesses are doing well. We are Louisiana Oil and Gas.
Louisiana businesses. By partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
ExxonMobil Baton Rouge keeps the local economy rolling. Our new aviation project created hundreds of jobs, drove millions of dollars to local businesses, and poured thousands more into our community to improve schools. 1 in 8 jobs in our parish can be traced back to ExxonMobil. Tomorrow's Baton Rouge is built by what we do today. A little energy goes a long way. ExxonMobil Baton Rouge. Energy lives here.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Robert Travis Scott of the Public Affairs Research Council and Michael Olivier of C100 are our guests. Let's get really into the mission of Reset for Louisiana's future, Reset Louisiana. We talked a little bit about the organizations that are part of it. We talked a little bit about how it came to be. But let's talk about its specific mission. Mike, why don't we start with you?
Well, we've been for a long time working together informally, Cable, PAR, Committee of 100. In 2013 and 2014, after discussions with Robert, in fact, we determined that we needed some outside influence to bring to mind, top of mind with our legislative leadership, that we needed to make some changes in tax reform. We needed to do some things that would make a difference in terms of being successful in business attraction and business retention. And so Robert knew people with the Tax Foundation. I went to Washington, D.C., brought my chair at the time, and brought the state economist, Dr. Jim Richardson, to meet with the people at the Tax Foundation in Washington, which is a non-government organization, a foundation, if you will. They study every state and their tax basis and compare and rank them. And so based on that, we wanted them to tell us what were the things that we were doing wrong, right, or otherwise. And we produced a book to that effect. It was about 105 pages. We gave it to the legislature. That ultimately ended up being followed by action from the legislature in what was HCR Task Force 11, HCR 11 Task Force, which Robert was part of. So was Barry Irwin. So was my chair. So with about a 13-member task force, they went ahead for the next year and basically outlined everything that we could about what needed to be changes in all of the tax requirements, from property tax to sales tax to income tax, both corporate and individual, in addition to looking at all sales and fees.
You've come up now with 8 specific recommendations for policy in 8 specific areas. And let me read them, Robert, and then I want you to begin to chime in. Send all children to kindergarten ready to learn. Transform the state's retirement system for a new era. Advance K-12 education policies that work. Design a modern, workable state constitution. Build a talent pool in the state. Build an efficient criminal justice system that improves public safety. Create a fair and competitive tax environment, and make transportation infrastructure an asset. So 8 critically important areas of state government that will help us move toward that potential that we've talked about. Let's start with early childhood education. Critically important to Governor John Bell Edwards. He's already talked about what he wants to do in terms of additional funding there. Why is that so important?
Well, Tim, I think it's critically important to everybody, not just the governor. I've never seen an issue where there's been so much buy-in by so many different people from so many different angles. Early childhood education is something that the state really needs more of, and I think there's a lot of support for it. The issue is we already have a structure in place to make this happen on the state level. We already have legislation and a good accountability system to start bringing more children under the age of 4 into a better educational experience, and also providing the kind of child care that's needed for the parents who need that type of would otherwise be very expensive option for them.
And the research tells us that if we want to have successful adults, that period from 3 years old to the 3rd grade is critically important,
It
right?
absolutely is critical, and it's a really long-term investment. But what we need to see come out of this, obviously there needs to be more resources for it. What we saw happen with the LA4 program, which was aimed at pre-K, is that over the years we put a lot of resources into it. Now we've got over 90% of 4-year-olds who do have access to pre-K in this state. Now we want to move it down a couple of notches. And this is going to take more resources from the state, making different priorities maybe in how we're doing our spending, but it's also going to take help on the local level, because every single parish has to devise its own way of governing and funding this and cooperating with the state to make it happen. So it's still a long way to go.
It's a workforce issue.
Right.
This is a workforce
Absolutely.
issue. And so it's not just a daycare proposition. We want these kids who can learn 2 years, 3 years. LA4 proved it. These parents that need to go to work, want to go to work, can't stay home and take care of their kids. And listen, you don't want to just send them to grandma's. Send them someplace where they watch TV all day. You want to send them someplace where they can absorb. At that age, they're so critical in terms of their learning process. So we can change things. We can change poverty. We can change education. We can change workforce. So this is a critical piece.
And we can give them that jump start that allows them. Before we end this segment, Robert, I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about and working on Louisiana's Constitution. Part of what Reset is looking to do is transform this old, maybe a little bit cumbersome Constitution as well.
It's a phenomenally cumbersome Constitution that we have, one of the longest in the nation, and we've amended it almost 200 times. Half of those amendments, and that's been since 1974 when we revised it, and it has grown so large and so difficult to deal with. So we want a more foundational document. And our focus at PAR has been a little less about the issue of a constitutional convention, although that's very important. It may be one vehicle to get it done. But we're trying to focus on exactly what would you change in the Constitution and what would those impacts be. And we've got a blueprint for that. And we want to share that with people. I don't think that that's going to be something in a brand new legislature that's going to take off from day one. But I think you wait. This new legislature is in there. They will become tired of the way the Constitution is bogging them down. They will start looking for solutions, for changes to that, and we've got them. We've got a path for you.
We talk about nothing happens while we wait. That's a moniker we use because we want to get some things done. One of the things, the reason our members invested in this is because we're tired of kicking the can.
Yeah.
We need to get some things done.
Well, part of what Reset for Louisiana's Future represents is a sense of urgency as well.
Yes.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about a few more of these policy areas that you guys are pushing forward for our state. We're visiting with Robert Travis Scott of PAR and Michael Olivier of C100, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
A lot of my friends were in college and stuff, which is great. It wasn't the route for me, you know, and financially, I know it's tough on a lot of people, so I saw welding. At first, my instinct was like, what pays the most money? You know, so I was like, welding, that's the way to go. It made a great living for me and my family. You can always work your way up. There's multiple ladders, and really the sky's the limit. You know, I thought I got to the max with as high as I can go with welding. As high as you want to grow, you can absolutely achieve it.
Welcome to Southwest Louisiana. 5 parishes working hand in hand to provide economic development, opportunity, and quality of life. $43 billion in projects underway, $65 billion in the pipeline, 18,000 construction workers, and 18,000 permanent jobs. It's all here. Welcome to Opportunity, the Southwest Louisiana Alliance.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're discussing Reset for Louisiana's Future with Robert Travis Scott of PAR and Mike Olivier of C100. One of the policy recommendations that maybe flies a little bit under the radar but is critically important to Louisiana's future is this idea of reforming the state's retirement system. I don't think actuarially it can survive if something's not done, and you've put a lot of thought into that.
Well, look, we're paying a huge debt on it, and we've been on time on our payments, and we need to continue to be on time of our payments, but we're talking about many billions of dollars that the state retirement systems are kind of behind in what they need to pay their eventual bills.
They call it the unfunded accrued liability.
That's right. I wasn't going to use that word, but that's what we call it. And, the problem with the systems is that we need to be paying a little bit more up front. We haven't really been facing up to the real cost of these systems. The other problem is they're really not very good retirement programs for teachers and for state employees. And the state employee system itself came forward and said, we have a problem. If you've only been in state service or a teacher for a few years, this system isn't very good for you. It's not portable. It, in some cases, doesn't give you any benefit at all. And you're really paying more into it as an employee than you're getting out of it. So it's not a very good program for the people involved in it. It's expensive for the unfunded accrued liability because of the way we structure it, almost like no other state. So there's a lot of fixes we can make and still do better for the employees.
And it takes some courage on those fixes as well, because these are tough decisions about a really important subject. Michael, I want to talk a little bit with you about another recommendation that Reset has, and that's make transportation infrastructure an asset. Almost no Louisiana Business and Industry Show goes by that we don't at least mention the issues we have in our state with infrastructure, our roads and our highways and our bridges. What's the focus there?
We've got to focus on transportation infrastructure, not only roads and bridges, but the whole infrastructure scheme, which we have the Mississippi River and other rivers, navigable waterways. We need to focus on keeping them open, accessible, navigable. Look at the new air service that we have in New Orleans as a result of the airport, the new airport there. I can remember just about 12 years ago, we didn't have any more international air service. Now we have 6.
Right.
And so that's what it's going to bring to the state. Also, people movers. What about the rail system? With 6 Class 1 railway lines running into the state, more than every other state, we ought to have some of the best opportunity, not only for moving freight, but for moving people as well. So the bridges are part of it. The roads are part of it. Commerce is dependent on all of those measures. And so it goes beyond roads and bridges. And we're not just talking about taxes here. Are we low in taxes? Yeah, we do pay less taxes on fuel than any other state. That is true. Should we raise our taxes? That's a decision that has to be made. We need to put more resources into transportation.
One way or the other, we've got to increase funding for infrastructure. We're $15 billion behind by any measure.
Yeah. It needs new resources, but I think part of the problem has been trust. Is this, if we raise new resources for this, is it going to go to just certain special interests? Is it really going to be spread around the state? But the legislature has put in some safeguards on this. There's a plan going forward. If there are more resources for it, I think you're going to find it's much more fairly distributed, and there's a lot more trust in the Department of Transportation system and how they would make the expenses.
And improved infrastructure, critically important to economic development in our state. Another thing that's critically important to economic development in our state is our tax structure. Michael, you deal with CEOs every day. Robert, you're talking to them as well. We interview them weekly on this show. They look for two things in a tax structure: simplicity and certainty. We have neither, right? You can argue about whether taxes are too high, or others argue that taxes are too low, that some aren't paying their fair share. It's a convoluted mess. We've got to simplify, streamline, and create certainty. Talk about it.
That was the issue when we went to the Tax Foundation, to compare the issues of how we tax, not only at the state level, but at the local level as well. And what are we trying to do? Listen, I've got to deal with people, not only businesses that we're trying to recruit to Louisiana, but people from other countries who are trying to understand our very complicated tax system, and people that have located here or started businesses here that we're trying to retain, that we're trying to keep here, rather than letting them go off to another state. It is a complicated system. We can fix this. We just need to make a more level playing field.
Sure.
We need to get rid of the franchise tax as an example. There are some simple things. It's not going to be done in one session. And oh, by the way, much of this has to be done during a fiscal session. In Louisiana, you have fiscal and non-fiscal sessions that every year they change. So we can't do anything until the special session is called, or the next fiscal session in 2021. But we need to get ready for it.
Even if you end up paying a low rate as a business in Louisiana, getting there is so convoluted and so complicated that it makes it difficult.
Actually, the problem is that rates are very high, and the offsets that we have and various exemptions and whatnot are also very high. It makes it a troublesome system.
We got just a little over a minute left, so I want to talk about the legislature and where this is going. Reset's going to be very active in the upcoming legislative session. You're going to be pushing for these reforms. What are you hearing from the legislature, Michael?
Well, first, we started in 2019, put $500,000 of private sector money into this project with the coalition of our three organizations. We're going into 2020. We're going to spend about half that amount so that we can now focus on people who've been elected. Last year, it was an election cycle. All of the candidates for the legislature was who we focused on, giving them the planks in their platform to go forward. Now, we want to impress upon them, let's get this work done now. These are the things that can be done. These are the areas. We're not writing the bills for them. We're not telling them what to do, but we're drawing the picture to show them what needs to be fixed. They know it. They agree with it. It's just how do we get there?
And they're not registering this as a really hotly partisan issue that we're laying out. There's a lot of agreement among Republicans and Democrats that these are really good priorities. They make a lot of sense, and they're doable.
How do we get there? 15 seconds. If folks want more information, where do they look?
Reset Louisiana. And that is where you look on the website for the Public Affairs Research Council. It's parlouisiana.org.
And C100. Guys, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll be watching closely. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.